All right. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Jackman Radio. So excited today. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I have the honor of talking to the world expert, world renowned, in my view. I think it's undisputed, the expert on the Epstein case and all things related to that. My friend Ryan Dawson. Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. Um, can't talk about Epstein in an adult way on YouTube, though, can you?
Well, we're going to try and do that today. That's why I wanted to bring you on and have this conversation, because so many people just have a superficial understanding of what the Epstein blackmail ring was, why it existed, how it existed, who funded it, and who were the people who were still at large, that we need to bring to justice, and people need to be made aware of. So obviously it's still in the news, but it's in the news in a real sanitized and watered down way. So just for the viewers, you could talk a little bit about how you how long you've known about the Epstein thing, how it came on your radar, and why they should know about it.
Well, we knew pieces of it. We didn't know, what we know now. But around 2007 or so, I had a forum. So, see, I've been censored a lot of places. I had a forum called Rise to Sense, which is now like a black porn site or something. Somebody bought it and turned it into that, but
Hunter bought it.
probably. Well, Hunter said he was watching the BBC for like an hour and he didn't see any BBC. He was confused.
Right.
We were covering other pedophile rings, the Franklin Credit Union, Finders Cult, things like that. And all the time I'll get some crazy mail from Spurgs, and it's hard to tell who's a legit victim or something and who is just, heard the story, wants to be part of a thing or whatever. And 99% of the time it's crap. But some things panned out, and Jeffrey Epstein got arrested. And that's when we look back at a lot of these things and saw, okay, there's a woman named, maybe I shouldn't say, I'll tell you, we'll call her M. First letter of her first name, we'll call her M. She told us a lot. And I had been looking at all the people around Epstein anyway for other reasons, the deep dive into PNAC and so on. And I'd known about the Khashoggis and the rape yachts that were going on there. Saudi Arabia likes to have hooker parades. Basically, they'd take people out in international water with a bunch of Eastern European models or whatever, and it was just pure debauchery. Stepping on their hair, peeing on their face, pooping on people, making them eat bugs, and just train raping these girls. Well, it's rape. I mean, they paid them, but whatever. They had no idea what they're getting into, and they're stuck on a boat and can't do anything. And so I was following the ties of the Saudis, which inevitably all roads lead to Israel every time. It doesn't matter what you're looking at: organ trafficking, pedophile rings, terrorist groups, whatever. It's those two, Saudi Arabia and Israel. But Israel's the more protected of the two. Saudi Arabia is protected because of its alliance with Israel. So these are the two groups that fund Al Qaeda as well. And there's a lot of human trafficking and gun running with terrorist groups, Iran-Contra style, where publicly it's condemned, but privately the U.S. is involved in it. And the main proxy states are the intelligence agencies of Saudi Arabia and Israel. Israel was founded through human trafficking at that time to get a dominant Jewish demographic on top of Palestine. You can see it was founded by terrorists. And so from its inception, they've had a large, well-financed, well-organized method of moving people from Europe to Palestine. Well, you can do that for a majority Jewish demographic. You can also do it in the sex slave trade, which was thriving in Israel and has been. And I got onto that around 1996, 95, 96, because they didn't even have laws against it until the 2000s. And they have brothels in Israel, mostly Eastern European white women. They put advertisements out. Organized crime is what I mean by they, for nannies or some sort of legitimate job, and then they would just take their passport away and lock them up and force them into forced prostitution, which is rape. There was some pushback against that in Israel, though, because so many of these girls were being taken to Tel Aviv, for example, that it was hurting the demographic. And they finally passed laws not against the traffickers, but against the girls for being illegal immigrants. So once they were too old for prostitution, they accused them of being illegal migrants and sent them back to Ukraine or wherever they got them with nothing in their pockets. It's pretty disgusting. So that's been going on. And we knew about the rape rings in the universities up north and the Northeast, especially in New York and New Jersey. There are entire administrations, like at art schools and girls' schools, that are part of these rings. Like what Epstein stepped into was a bunch of pre-existing networks. When Maria Farmer and some of these girls would get financed by Epstein to go to these schools where they knew the administration was part of this. Very well organized. Not just Jeffrey Epstein created this network by himself. The Maxwells, of course, notorious spies for Israel, helped catch Mordecai Vanunu, who's the whistleblower. The OG Assange was Mordecai Vanunu, right? Told the world about Israeli nuclear weapons. Sneeze. I think I'm allergic to Israel.
So Epstein really, he didn't start the thing. This was something he was pipelined into.
He was good at it, but these things, he was just the newest, that generation's
face. He was the face. Whatever. Yeah.
A lot of the things that his principal financiers his principal guy is Les Wexner, but then you also have Leon Black, Conrad Black, apparently Bill Gates to a lesser extent, and Glenn Dubin especially.
And for people who don't know who the Blacks are, tell them who the Blacks are and Glenn Dubin.
Yeah, okay, so the Blacks have the same last name, but they're not related. So Conrad Black's a Canadian billionaire, part of Hollinger, part owner of the Jerusalem Post with Richard Pearl and Fred Felding and stuff. Not anymore. He got his huge white collar crime scandal, and Leon Black is a hedge fund, or used to be a hedge fund tycoon for Global Apollo Management, and he has some other lesser ones. And he's a billionaire from the United States, Jewish Zionist. That's basically true about everybody I'm going to talk about, unless I say otherwise. And he financed Epstein. And then there's Glenn Dubin, who's a hedge fund manager, also in the U.S., whose wife was Epstein's girlfriend until she got too old, meaning 20s.
Yeah, she aged out at 12.
She was a Swedish model, pageant winner. Her last name was Anderson. Now it's Ava Dubin. They have a daughter, Selena, who Epstein wanted to marry. And you can see her pictures all over the Florida compound and in other pictures where there's little kids around. Usually she's one of them. The Dubins brought her into that den. And of course, the Dubins were both raping kids themselves. And Ava Dubin would go out with Ghislaine Maxwell and recruit young girls and groom them together. But Maxwell's father was a spy. He helped Israeli intelligence. And he also helped steal the Promise software. So one of the targets that Maxwell was doing, not just preventing, the counter espionage or the whistleblowers like Vanunu, was stealing science and tech from the United States. And one of the ways they do that is through bribery and blackmail. And so a lot of the people they're targeting are all in science and technology. Now, they get a lot of financial institutions because the way you can get to science and tech is through the donor class. Universities, that's where you get grants to do R&D. So a private company wants to work on whatever, they work on it with the university. That way they can siphon off some grad students, what modern day indentured servitude, and get research done on whatever they're, like MicroWire case, for example, which I covered from 2015 to now. That's a technology that Israel stole from the United States, and they did it through the system. If you can bribe or you can force donors, into your pocket to say, oh, you better be nice to this guy, or they're going to withhold their funds for said university. The university will bend the knee, and they are more than willing to share trade secrets that they have on private industry with the donor class, which ultimately ends up going back to Israel.
Right.
So that's one of the things that the purpose of it was.
So how does Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein meet each other? How do they get on each other's radar? And when did that happen?
So
Do we know?
Epstein was always been a con artist. He was a college dropout that who became a math teacher at one of these schools that already had was already part of one of these networks, right? The Dalton School, whose headmaster, well, first of all, Bill Barr's father brings him in, and then the new headmaster was himself raping and sleeping with a 14-year-old student who he housed. She couldn't afford the school, so his wife was dying of cancer or sick with something. He's like, I could use someone around the house. My wife's sick. So he's got a high school girl living with him who he abused. And so he had no problem hiring Epstein. And Epstein didn't do a lot of math teaching. He would like play the piano and do some other things. But Ace Greenberg brings him into Bear Stearns. Ace Greenberg's 2 children went to that high school. Ace Greenberg is also accused of sexual harassment and had to pay out millions of dollars in settlements. So obviously he did something. So again, Jewish Zionists, like all of them, right? He brings Epstein in as, well, this guy's, cool with this, right? Even in organized crime, not many are pedophiles, right? Even the guys that shoot people that will, they'll do racketeering, narcotics, whatever. But even among criminals, they're like, hey, man, you want to rape some kids? They're like, hell no, right? Even they have that moral. So they found a willing participant in Epstein. It was around then that he meets Ghislaine Maxwell. We don't have a perfect date of when they brought him in, but it's in the 80s. Like their relationship has been for a long time, because we do know from Arvin Menashe and others when Maxwell is the one that recruited Epstein, and they talked to Israeli intelligence. And first operations they tried these two with. These two are dumb, by the way.
Yeah, Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, good, but Epstein's a good con artist. Like he doesn't. If you ever pin him down, he wouldn't know what I was talking about financially or with science, but he knows like kind of what to say. And when you have a lot of money, they don't really ask questions, or people just go, yeah, because they don't want to lose, the ability to get you to donate. But they tried gun running. They introduced him to Douglas Leese, who's part of, he's in the UK, was part of a procurement of fighter jets and stuff from Saudi Arabia. It's a little boring story, I guess, but it's very, lucrative contracts in a gray area, not quite black market or above ground. It's how a lot of weapons deals are. They're kind of get tornado planes and stuff. And anyway, they weren't very good at any of that, but they found their niche in their proclivity towards perverted, debaucherous kidnapping and raping. And so that's where they decided to thrive. And they really like, okay, well then Wexner sets him up. He's part of the mega group. Like, here's how it works, because they've done this before. You're going to target these people. You're going to groom some kids who are just perfect at this, get them addicted to it, and we're going to target these said people. They profile people. They go after the donor class. They go after science and tech. There are other rings like congressmen, etc. They all seem to be part of this. And it seems to be whenever somebody does blow the whistle, out comes the dirt, right? Whether it's Elliot Spitzer, oh, you had an affair. Vitter, oh, you had an affair. Scott Ritter, oh, you jerked off on a webcam with some girl or whatever. There's always, I don't know, guys just have no self-control, whatever. But you don't seem to be able to get in a position of power without being compromised. And so they just won't let someone they don't have dirt on behind the wheel. So
Yeah, so for people who don't know, the Mega Group is a group of billionaires who are obviously ultra hardcore Zionists. And
Yeah.
there's the Bronfmans from Canada. There's Wexner. Talk about what the Mega Group is, who's in it, and their motivations for funding these kind of things.
Yeah, Mega is the donor class. So it's people were looking for Mega, like there's mention of Mega as a mole. It's like, should in the Israelis in a cable saying, should we approach Mega with this? When APAC was caught spying on the United States for the 1 millionth time or whatever, or the Jonathan Pollard case and stuff, they want to know, like, can Mega overturn this? Mega is the Mega Group, and it's a group of philanthropists in their own words, but it's a bunch of Zionist Jewish billionaires from the US and Canada who are actually the second generation. The first generation is the Sunborn Group, which was the clique of Jewish millionaires that got together to help finance the terrorist organizations that created the state of Israel. And they did everything from smuggling dynamite to people, to uranium out of the United States and Europe, to not from Europe, uranium, the rest of it though, to Palestine, so that they could create a state on top of a state. And they worked with organized crime. Mickey Cohen put up $1 million for the Irgun gang. $1 million is an enormous amount of
This
money
is
at
in
that
the
time.
30s or 40s.
40s, yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Back then. Yeah.
mhm. And they
Still.
work with Meyer Lansky and all the crime lords and whatnot. And, so Rudolph Sonborn and Hillel Silver and these people, Rabbi Friedman, and they're meeting with Frank Sinatra and Meyer Lansky and all the who's who of Jewish mafia in the United States. One of the other things they were doing in gun running to Israel was the anti-Castro Cubans, which were supposed to rise up during the Bay of Pigs, didn't, because they didn't actually have the weapons, because all of that had been diverted to Israel. They stole, Hank Greenspun stole weapons out of Hawaii, which is becoming a U.S. state. So they stole guns from scrap yards. A lot of the surplus World War II weapons, right? You just had World War II and it's over. So what do you do with all these toys? A lot of the surplus World War II weapons ended up in Israel. So they're supposed to decommission or whatever, and they would just lie or move them around. And, Greenspun sent it to Mexico, who sent it to Israel. He would end up buying the Flamingo Hotel after they shot Bugsy Siegel, passed it on to Mo Dalitz, another Jewish gangster, and then sold it to the Fertitta family, which is the family that used to own UFC up until a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The threads, man, still going. So the Mega Group.
Remember in Trump's Zionist Ball and Chain where I was talking about WWE and UFC, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave this alone for now. But trust me,
it's very much alive. It's alive and well and thriving. So the Mega Group. Now, when we think about it, we don't just think of like a bunch of guys in a boardroom. We have a bunch of these billionaires who are very, very powerful unto themselves. So they don't necessarily all have to be meeting saying we're going to target these group of people because we have access agents to get to them. And then we're going to get the dirt on them. And then when
they're not going to do it themselves either. They're going to outsource that to Epstein and stuff. Like,
so
you don't want to risk your billionaires committing crimes themselves.
So
you just have the plausible deniability. Oh, I just donated to this foundation or whatever. I thought he was a great guy, and damn well
he was.
I just gave him a house because reasons,
Right. So when people say, "Oh wow, Epstein lived in like 72nd Street, this multi-million-dollar biggest private residence in New York City," and Wexner just gave it to him for $1. So people say that, and then they don't look beyond that. They don't go in any deeper into it. So.
Les Wexner is part of the Mega Group.
Part of the Mega Group.
Les Wexner and the Bronfmans and some of the people you're naming. I mean, they're the ones that created Birthright Israel. All the Bronfmans. Steinhardt and the Schottenstein family out of Ohio, just like Wexner.
Right.
They're bankrolling all of this stuff, and
they're doing it through foundations and putting money into trusts and endowments and colleges and research and stuff.
Yeah, they just move money around in a circle
and launder it and move it around. And then Epstein takes it and he moves it around. And that's what pays for the jet, what pays for the island, what pays for
it's
travel.
Tax evasion. And it's also a way of, you can't just hand somebody
$15 million.
$150 million for, you know, babysitting or something. Like, you have to have a pretext.
Right.
So they'll say, well, this is for the cleaning up the oceans or whatever, you know,
Oh,
like Maxwell
Terramar.
had it.
Yeah,
Right.
that
This is
bullshit.
for something, something. Yeah. And you can't really prove how much cleaner the oceans got or not anyway, for many years.
No.
So yeah, that thing's now defunct. But looking at the board of that, it's a bunch of criminals.
Right. So it's
It's
just
so endless, and I've gone over the details of exactly which foundations, how much money,
Mhm.
named them all. I've done that. I've made a giant map of it. I've
Right.
gone over it in interviews ad nauseum, but I'm trying to give the macro picture for the noobs so they don't get
Yes.
lost
This
into
is this is why I
all of
wanted.
that. But
Yeah, this is why I
Gratitude
wanted.
America is the one you need to know about this one. Epstein made an LLC called or foundation called Gratitude America that was principal in gathering money from people like Leon Black.
Right, because Black had to.
He bribed the police office in Florida with a company he made that was supposedly for science, but it gives hundreds of thousands of dollars to the police department that's investigating Epstein. Right, so they
The
look the other
corruption
way.
is just it runs
Mhm.
it runs so deep.
That was set up by Darren Endike. That was his principal lawyer. There's photographs of him going in and out of the New York mansion with boxes of something, you know.
God, the rape mansion. So
Worms. Yep.
Wexner sets him up with the rape mansion and has it outfitted with cameras and recording devices everywhere and pinholes in all the
Mhm.
bathrooms and all the rooms. And we got people like Ehud Barak at the rape mansion. We got people like
Yep.
Prince Andrew at the rape mansion. How is it that Prince Andrew and Ehud Barak are not they're not in any more hot water? I mean, we know Andrew was, but I mean, is it just because they're part of that protected class and a huge house of cards would fall if a couple of those big names went down?
I mean, Andrew ought to be. He's been accused of raping a minor, and there's a photograph of them together.
Right.
What's your explanation for why you're hanging out with some 17-year-old American kid at some other woman's house at night while you're a married royal, supposedly getting pizza or whatever? There isn't any, but he's part of the protected class. I mean, it's very hard to take down any member of the royal family because all of them protect the one that does it because they feel like that, you know, if one of us goes down, it affects us all.
Mutually assured destruction.
I would say the opposite. I would say if all of you are abetting someone's crime, now you made it so all of you are part of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Prince Andrew not only did he rape Virginia Giuffre and visit Epstein multiple times, but he used to visit Peter Nygaard as well, who's currently in jail for the same things.
Another billionaire, another island.
Yep, another Canadian billionaire. Didn't own an island, but almost owned all the property on it. And he had a little Hatfield and McCoy war going on with his neighbor, Mr. Bacon, another billionaire from North Carolina and down there in the Bahamas. And he actually got sued by Sean Connery over property disputes. So
James Bond sued him.
Yeah, James Bond sued him.
When Robert Walters asked Connery, Mr. Connery, years ago you said, hitting women wasn't a bad thing. Do you stand by that? He's like, well, yes, and my views haven't changed. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but sometimes I just can't let it go. That interview, that's gold. That's a gold mine.
Well,
he made it 90
rights
years.
and lefts.
God. So you know what? I've always been curious too, Ryan.
Just a different generation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Connery. Couldn't have been easy being married to that dude. What I don't hear a lot about is Epstein's brother. Is that Mark Epstein?
It's a real estate agent in New York.
What is his whole role in this thing, and why don't we hear more about him?
Because he's so wealthy, and like you get a lot of shit when you start reporting on these people. Like, I'm banned on everything right now. Mark Epstein is the one that procured a lot of the housing adjacent to Wexner's mansion, where they housed models from MC Squared that were being provided to them by Jean-Luc Brunel, who is also in prison right now, and he's a child rapist.
Touch on him too.
So it's like, okay, explain to me how these 12 to 17-year-old girls are affording this apartment in New York, like at all. Like, oh, I don't care if there's 20 roommates. No way. Right. But they would house these models there and they go, oh, well, the agency pays for the building and it's, just to house our models right next to Jeffrey Epstein or whatever. And a lot of the rape tourism, I'll call it, didn't have to happen in Epstein's personal house. It could go just down the block and do it. They had the whole 14th floor hotel at one point, and Ehud Barak was often visiting these places as well as Epstein rape mansion. And everybody knew when he was coming into town because he's the prime minister of Israel and he's got all the security detail around him. And they all wear the same rape jacket, that black jacket that Prince Andrew and Epstein are wearing in the photograph in the park. All these Israeli Secret Services stuff wear that, and Ehud Barak would wear it. He'd often also wear this a big like fuzzy hat and stuff, trying to disguise himself. Like, what are you doing? If you come here with the equivalent of the Israeli Social Security, right, and you all have your little black SUVs and stuff, like you're not hiding
You're not blending
anything
in, dude.
from the locals. Exactly.
No, you're gonna get picked up and photographed.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna see you. Yeah, Jean-Luc Brunel. So that's another name. Obviously he's in custody. He's arrested. Who is Jean-Luc Brunel, and what was his role in the Epstein trafficking ring?
Jean-Luc Brunel was from France. He's known for, he and his goons would go around and Bill Cosby people. They would drug women at clubs and then bring them back to their place and rape them, and other things. He was known for that roofing people and what we call hot Cosby, putting growth hormones in the drink and stuff, zombifies people and raping them. And he got into this thing called Karen Models, which is a French company. And he basically, he brought the Karen brand, Karen Models America was sold to MC Squared, which is a modeling company out of Tel Aviv, Israel. And so he was running MC Squared USA, and they had a branch in Paris as well. So he went from Karen to MC Squared. MC Squared has been a honeypot. That's just like a way. How are you going to get a bunch of young, good-looking women? Modeling agency, perfect. Oh, you're here to get pictures. And some of the ways that, who would they model for? Well, be LL brands, right? If you couldn't get Victoria's Secret, there's Abercrombie and Finch and these other things that they own. And models as young as 12 would be like naked in black and white photos, but they'd cover their nipple or whatever, and just to sell clothing in the store. And they'd plaster that crap all over the store too. And those are kids. Like, oh, that girl looks young. Like, excuse, she is. So that was a way to stovepipe a steady supply of young women. And in '89, you've got the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so you had hyperinflation of the ruble and all those. There was desperate need to get foreign currency in the Eastern Bloc because your savings was just gone. Whatever, no matter how much it was, it's useless because of the hyperinflation. So to get foreign currency, people were looking for jobs abroad. And again, girls were lured into modeling jobs, nannying, babysitting, maids, whatever. And of course, as soon as they got them, they take their passport away and force them into prostitution, just like Israel had been doing since its inception and getting to pass. Like, no one would call them out on it. Because the same organizations that are moving women around are also attached to like Holocaust relief funds and things like that. And it's political suicide to question it, because then you're a Nazi, right? You can't say, well, they're using that as cover for human trafficking, which they definitely are still doing and were doing. No one will go near it. I mean, they won't even admit the Palestine conflict. They won't even talk about settlements, right? Like, that's how you can't touch that, anything to do with Israel. Would let you know how powerful this group is. I mean, they run the press in the United States, and a lot of congressmen are compromised from these rings.
So,
but it's really nasty. Anyway, Brunel comes over and he becomes a provider for Epstein. So he sent him 12-year-old triplets at one point, who were all 3 raped.
yeah, like for a birthday or something. That story's out there, right?
It was a birthday present. Gave him triplet 12-year-olds. He was providing women to Epstein and others, and to Maxwell. But Epstein was after Epstein got caught, Brunel's like, oh, my reputation is ruined. This is when he went to jail, and sort of went to jail in 2008. It wasn't really jail. It was a sweetheart deal, but
yeah.
Brunel actually sues Epstein, say, to distance himself. But it's always accuse others of what you're guilty of yourself, right? He was every bit as much into the same hobbies, we'll say, as Jeffrey Epstein. He would drug women Epstein's niche was more of like, oh, hey, come give me a massage, and it would kind of escalate in eroticism. Burnell would just drug and rape him. Whatever, rape is rape. But yeah, he took advantage of all these young girls. And MC Squared has also sort of flown under the radar in this whole thing. There's still a working company in Israel right now. And they were recruiting girls from all over the world and sending them to the Caribbean, New Mexico, these isolated places
So where was
where anything
Brunel?
they wanted to happen could happen.
Where was Brunel apprehended? Who was he arrested by? And what's the status of Jean-Luc Brunel right now?
So he got arrested in December. Like Nygaard and Burnell both got arrested last December. During the Trump presidency, a lot of major pedophiles went to prison, and they're almost all tied to Epstein or Nygaard. And the Bronfmans are the bridge between both, right? Because they're involved in, and Andrew is also a bridge between both. Like, I have a calendar that's behind the Palestinian flag, but it says on one of the monthly quotes, Prince Andrew is the Kevin Bacon of pedophile rings.
6 degrees separation.
Yeah. So, but Epstein is majorly successful. I mean, he's got Ehud Barat, he's got Ehud Omar, he had Tony Blair, Bill Clinton. You're talking about the heads of states of Israel, the United Kingdom, the United States, all the way to the top. And who has a black book like that? And then you've got royalty from Spain, England, so on. Like, people you shouldn't know are all in this book. And of course, Dershowitz, who's a serial rapist defender. Like, he's, whether it's all these people, Roman Polanski, I mean, Brovich.
Yeah, you got Dershowitz writing letters, putting out op-eds about the age of consent and all that, lowering it.
And a number of these people, the Schoensteins, Dershowitz, and Steinhardt and Stahl, all personally wrote Bill Clinton to get Mark Rich pardoned, and Pincus Green. And Mark Rich and Pincus Green were trafficking people too. Mark Rich was on Interpol's Most Wanted list for a long time.
Yeah, he had his own jet, Mark Rich.
Yeah, he ran Glencore commodity companies, and they were.
Is he from California?
Principal exploitation of a lot of African nations, and that's another way that you can get kids is poverty-stricken, broken areas.
Right. So you have all these ghouls, and yeah, you mentioned New Mexico, the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Now, what's the status of the Zorro Ranch right now, and how does that tie into
they
the
had bribed
whole
the
thing?
governor of New Mexico.
Well, they had
right?
Richardson.
Yep, they had him compromised.
Bill Richardson.
And so, yeah, he had a ranch surrounded. It's kind of like an island because
getting
all
access
the property
to it
around, the mansion or whatever is no one can get in there. I mean, it's like his own private little part of New Mexico. So he has that. And what was weird is they didn't raid the New Mexico or the Paris properties for months. I'm like, well, you're giving them months to go in and get rid of everything. Exactly. Like, they raided New York and they found CDs and things, and they found stuff in the safe. And then they just let everything else sit there. Palm Beach, Little St. Jeffrey's was just sitting there. Paris, by the time they went into Paris, it had been clean, like with a fine tooth comb and toothbrush. Like, nothing was there. They moved everything out. And you got to wonder, well, why would the FBI do this? Why would the Paris authorities do this? Then you look at who it's comprised of, and you're like, oh, y'all are part of it. The bars,
bars.
Christopher Wray,
cover-up artists.
These people do.
Yeah, he's bringing down the deep state, though. Taking down the he is the fucking deep state.
He is the deep state.
Yeah, it's complete horseshit.
They went after Epstein because Trump had personal beef with him and Maxwell, and he's an egomaniac, and they just didn't know how big that was going to be.
I know.
And then they really limited it to that. It's just Epstein, Burnell, and Maxwell got arrested out of that ring. And then other people have been stepping down and stuff.
Yeah, like Black you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, so when Ghislaine got popped and Trump was asked about it, he's like, I don't really know her, but I wish her well. I just wish her well.
Well, I'd point out that that's not from pressure from mass media. Mass media covered Epstein when they thought it went to Trump, right? They're like, oh, right. Acosta,
we
Trump.
Can take Trump
the
down. The
moment it didn't, there's like, oh, we're not interested. But online media, where it's still allowed, have been keeping this case alive. And enough so that the people at Global Apollo wanted to look in and audit Leon Black and figure out that, oh, wow, you did give 158, actually $168 million to Epstein. Explain. They started looking into Bill Gates because, I mean, his own wife's divorcing him over it because he just
Right.
lied to her. He's like, what are you doing late at night? And writing things like, oh, a very attractive Swedish woman and her daughter came over, so I ended up staying late in the night. What kind of married guy's like, yeah, I'm just hanging out with my friend, and a model and a
Is that a text
16-year-old
message
kid
he
came.
sent to his wife?
He wrote that in an email saying, explaining why he
And
was late to whatever.
these emails got leaked?
Yeah, they're in the New York Times and stuff now, but
Jesus.
it wasn't, this case was dead other than activist journalism, like, kept it going. And people, the public's interested. Every little nugget of information about Epstein is they're on it like a Kennedy file,
Mhm.
But Fox, CNN, the networks, they're done. Like, they don't report it at all. It was a little bit in
No, it's
2019 and over,
superficial.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you had to point people, Ryan, into a direction that you look to, and I know obviously you're the gold standard to research yourself, but if you had to point, so-called normies in a direction that is good information, that are people who do good work on this, who would you point them towards?
Myself, for actually, I mean, I hate saying something like that, but I don't know a better Epstein thing. Sean Atwood's been covering it with a lot of different people. Anyone,
Yeah, Atwood's been
all the
doing good
Sean
work.
Atwood stuff
Yeah.
is good. Kirby Summers is doing work on it. I mean, there's lots of people. I mean, everybody knows a little piece of it, it seems. But I think
Yeah.
what the women themselves say, Virginia Giuffre, Farmer, what the victims have come out and said themselves is enough information. As far as, like, if you want to know about the white collar crimes they did, him setting up Liquid Funding Limited and using that to basically as a subsidiary of Bear Stearns to offset toxic assets temporarily and buy them back at the first of the month so they would look good for rating agencies and move around commercial paper, and the scandals at Tower Financial. All the financial stuff, like, ANC has covered that the best. As far as the rape rings and things, they're all kind of reporting on, like, who's caught up in this web or whatever, but not tracing it back. Just maybe Wexner, but not why and what's Wexner
Just
doing, what
whispers
Trump
of
been doing.
Wexner, not even
Yeah,
that deep, just superficial whispers.
people didn't with Mega. They didn't know what the Mega donors were. They just said the Mega Group, and they had like this one post from LaRouche or whatever that all of them quote, and never got any deeper. I'm like, dude, I know exactly who those people are and what they're doing.
Yeah, you
This
pulled
is
back the
this is
layers.
Israel. I mean, this is you.
Yeah, this is an Israeli
It is. It's
intelligence
obviously
operation.
like
Yeah, it's
Maxwell's
slapping you in
daughter
the
is
face.
running the operation,
Yeah.
and they've got prime ministers on the list.
Yeah.
And Wexner is financing them through the Wexner Foundation, which Jeffrey Epstein was a part of, was financing Ehud Barak through Reporting and Carbine.
Yeah.
You see that a lot.
And then I wanted to ask you about, obviously the whole thing is super dark, but another thing that I don't know that there's more than whispers or what kind of evidence there's out there, but Epstein
Killing them.
actually killing people and,
Mhm.
and victims being killed, their bodies, what does that look like? And what's out there on that for research and testimony from survivors?
Well, they had different classes of victims, and the expendables, the ones with no family, the ones kidnapped from Eastern Europe or in orphanages, or just some trailer park somewhere with, they get them hooked on heroin and have them OD, or they take them out. The expendables have been erased. There were others, because Epstein, like his core group, people like Virginia, like native English speaking girls that he found locally, he'd groom them and keep them. And she escaped in a very clever way. She's like, oh, well, I'm going to go to Thailand. But the ones he wanted to impregnate, because this was his weird ass goal, he was going to start making babies with the sort of thin blonde ballerina types that he favored. And Selena Dubin seemed to be one of those. Virginia Giuffre seemed to be one of those. This guy was way out there. He wanted to clone himself in New Mexico. He wanted to preserve his brain and penis and cryogenics and, like, crazy, crazy
Yeah,
person.
the big egg, Wexner's favorite egg.
Yeah, but if you weren't one of the ones he was going to impregnate, they didn't keep you around that long. Like, once you were done, you got passed around to other rings. Those guys would rape and abuse you for a while, and then they would take care of it. Epstein didn't have to kill you himself. He'll just send you to a fellow billionaire rape ring, and then knowing damn well what they do with those girls, right? And then they get disappeared.
So when we see on the news a young girl who's found somewhere of a heroin overdose or a drug overdose or
You never
X,
know.
Y, and Z, yeah, you can't say, but chances
The
are,
same thing to little boys in both the Finders Cult and the Franklin Credit Boys
Finders and
Town.
Franklin, yeah,
Yeah, they get them hooked on heroin and other drugs, and these people are like willing to suck a dick because they need their fix so bad, you know, so they do it willingly.
yeah.
Um,
It's just that it's so dark, but it's not something that's talked about a lot about it, but it's reality. It's a harsh
mhm.
it's a harsh reality, and
And
it
they
needs to.
changed policy forever. I mean, there was Clinton's more public honey trap was Monica Lewinsky, right?
Mhm.
Trying to get him to bomb Iraq, but the Israelis had always been anti-Iran until like the middle of Clinton's presidency. There was like they wanted to get rid of Iran and Iraq, but Ariel Sharon was the anti-Iran guy. But Netanyahu was like, no, we're going to take out Iraq first, then Iran. And they approached Clintons with this, but one of the things they wanted is they needed James Woolsey as the director of the CIA, and they got it. And Clinton hated him, didn't talk to him his entire tenure, you know.
Yeah, that's
But
another
they had
thing
him compromised, and they brought
I
him
wanted to
in.
get into. Explain, right? So the Clinton Woolsey thing, an Epstein blackmail ring exists on one level to manipulate policy, manipulate appointments, manipulate cabinets, what leaders in
Mhm.
America do. So yeah, we'll dig a little
Because
bit
the
into that.
president's temporary. It's way
Yes.
better to get hold of the CIA. Like if you can get the CIA, you have the fucking CIA.
Yeah.
That's a permanent
So
thing.
so the Israelis in the 90s wanted James Woolsey. So who was James Woolsey and why did they want him to
James,
be CIA director?
he is a hardcore Zionist loyalist. This is the guy that was the source for the Weekly Standard and PNAX anthrax mythology. Right? James Woolsey is the one that came back and reported about the bogus Atta Prague meeting, and he's sourcing Israeli intelligence, right? So he said Israeli security forces witnessed a transfer of anthrax from senior Iraqi officials to Mohammed Atta in Prague. Every single part of that's a lie. They weren't in Prague, neither was Atta, and Iraq didn't have anthrax. But Woolsey, he's the former director of the CIA, and he's saying it. And so then Gary Schmidt and Fred Barnes would write about it, sourcing Woolsey, who's sourcing the Israelis, in the Weekly Standard, which was just the kind of online mouthpiece using Lockheed seed money for the project of a new American century for Robert Kagan and William Crystal. Robert Kagan would also write about anthrax. And then Colin Powell would go to the UN with the mock trial of anthrax doing that speech about WMDs.
Right.
And that's the legal reason for why the war in Iraq
The war
starts.
happened. Yeah. So
Well, Israel wanted a war in Iraq. And Woolsey made it happen after September 11th. He made it happen again. They did it twice, right? The second Iraq War is based on this WMD's mythology, which again came from James Woolsey.
what does that look like? Bibi Netanyahu, people from Mossad, people at the embassy here in DC approach Clintoners, people and say, hey, we got this recording of you. We got these pictures of you. We need Woolsey to be your CIA director.
But like they're not going to out him and lose the presidency.
The leverage.
So they're gonna push it, but so far, right? Okay, you can get this and this, and there's competing factions in Israel.
Right.
One wants this, one wants that, right? And Clinton seemed to be compromised by both.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Bubba, yeah, Bubba cocaine cowboy couldn't control himself.
Mhm. And Israel benefited from the war in the Balkans. They scooped up a lot of kids. Anytime there's a conflict, the predators go in and prey on the newly homeless children. Jesus. Or the newly orphaned kids, and scoop them up and bring them in these rings. And it's disgusting, man. It's dark. Saudi Arabia does the same thing in Sudan. If they're old enough and male, they'll get used as mercenary soldiers and sent into Yemen or wherever to go die. And if they're women, exactly what you think happens.
So how do we connect it to what's going on in the Gaza today and policy with Israel and Palestine? Because obviously movers and shakers in Washington are compromised by Israel and the Mossad.
Biden certainly is. He thinks children are a scratch and sniff sticker.
Yeah, well, I mean, we see what he does that just when he knows cameras are on him in the Senate floor.
Yeah, he
You
has
know,
that little self-control, and he'll still do
yeah.
it even when he knows there's a camera on him.
Come here.
Taking showers with his relatives, and
Come here. You want to shower with Daddy, Ryan? You want to come shower with Daddy? I love Hunter. I'm so goddamn proud of him. But yeah. So they're still pulling the
we got
strings
a
at
film on the Bidens called Corn Pop's Revenge
Corn
that
Pop's
gets into all
Revenge.
the just sick debauchery, man. They ripped off cancer research after their son died of brain cancer. Took out
Yeah,
$4 million.
there's a special place in hell for those people, man. It's
They did. They're
disgusting.
involved in hit and runs and refused to pay the families, and
Come on, man. Come
working
on,
with the
man.
Boston
He
Mafia.
jumped out of the car, Ryan. Come on, man. My brother didn't see him.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so clearly, movers and shakers in the administration now, who at the Pentagon, they're compromised by the Mossad in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And
they really thought Hillary was going to get in there, and she didn't. And,
dude, the king was not supposed to win. He was
no.
not Trump.
And they
he didn't
had
even
to
think he
get
was
rid
going
of
to
him.
win.
They
Yeah,
had to get rid of him. They tried to impeach him day one. They got rid of Michael
the
Flynn.
Russian bullshit.
Yeah, Michael Flynn had the whole thing was because of Israel. He went to the UN Security Council trying to get them to change their votes about Israeli settlements, and he went to all of them. And one of the ones, including like France and Britain, was Russia. So he talked to them like his job is to do.
Right.
But he went in there trying to convince them to change their vote on that at the behest of Jared Kushner, who was doing it at the behest of Netanyahu.
Bibi. Yeah.
And they didn't touch that with a 6 million foot pole. Instead, they decided, you spoke to Russia, Russiagate. Russia hacked the election. Russia. So the thing they feared the most was normalizing relations with Russia.
Yeah, détente with Russia.
Right. The war in Syria is over. All that stuff's over if U.S. works with Russia.
Because that's what the king wanted. He spoke of it all through the primary. I think it'd be nice, Ryan, if we got along with Russia. Okay. We could be partners. We could be partners.
But he did end CIA funding in Syria after one day after meeting with Putin. Was June 17th of 2017. He ended it all. But, he also lobbed cruise missiles at him too. And
yeah, that wasn't too great. So did Epstein have anything on Trump? I mean, what did they have on Trump? Or did they try to get him? Did they not get him? What's your take on that?
Trump is a willing ideological participant. I mean, he's a Zionist anyway. His family, his youngest daughter married into the Kushner family. You don't need anything on Trump. If you have something on her, then you control him too. He'd do anything for his baby doll. And
if she wasn't my daughter, Ryan, we'd probably be dating. Okay, we'd probably be dating. He said that many times.
Yeah, that's pretty sick thing to say. That's something Biden would actually do. He married the babysitter.
Yeah, come on, you want to come shower
like that
with
happened?
Daddy?
His wife dies in a car accident, and he marries Hunter's babysitter.
Hunter's babysitter is gonna babysit.
I imagine that was good for his children.
You're gonna babysit me in my time of need, Ryan. Okay. It's about
babysitters now their mom.
This is about the soul of Amtrak. Okay, I'm from Amtrak. I'm from Amtrak, Pennsylvania, Ryan. God bless your soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gangster planet, and I want people to be more aware of it, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, Ryan. We're not afraid to talk about it, right? So how do we connect it to what's happening right now in our response to
I would
Palestine?
say it's overkill. Like the thing with Palestine is they're on board with that anyway, just from the normal AIPAC bribery. Mm-hmm. It's the largest lobby in the world, in the United States, at least. And a lot of Christian Zionists have an affinity for Israel. Like they think it's their land and God gave it to them, and it's in the Bible, and Jews are supposed to have Israel. That's what they genuinely believe. And because you can't say otherwise, or you'll be blasted as anti-Semitic, right? It's the media in the United States that is pushing that more than anything, not blackmail. AIPAC is huge, but it's Jeff Zucker and Jeff Zuckerberg and people like that are like hardcore Zionists.
Zucker's CNN, right?
Zucker's CNN. He's the worst. And he has a very hands-on control the whole, newsroom kind of method. And they are pro-Israel. And Gaza, they're just a bunch of human shields. That's everything that Israel blows up must have been a Hamas base, right?
Yeah,
including the SS Liberty and the SS Patria. Those were Hamas bases back in the day, even though Hamas didn't even exist yet. So that's they would have done that anyway. as far as, you know, maybe some people don't speak out on it when they would have because they're compromised or something, but because it is weird that there's not a single person on any 3-letter network or one congressperson to say, hey, enough's enough on this.
Yeah.
What are we doing? And are they all careerists? I mean, you'd think someone that was about to retire would say, hey, you know, maybe we shouldn't be supporting ethnic cleansing here and there. But, you know, they do the same thing for Saudi Arabia. And that doesn't have all the religious stuff behind, because you can say, well, Christians identify with Israel or whatever, but Saudi Arabia is an Islamic monarchy, right? We're supposed to be democracy, and like, so you have a monarchy that is Wahhabis, that is openly financing Al Qaeda in your face right in front of you, and you sell them guns.
Oh, I mean,
so
they bring MBS.
The MIC is powerful, like
yes.
the weapons, because Lockheed's the one that financed PNAC, right? So these weapons industries, that's corporate welfare to the nth degree.
The trough.
And they got a lot of sway. And you think, you know, former APAC employees like Wolf Blitzer sitting there pontificating about, you know, well, what about all the jobs we'd lose if we didn't finance Lockheed Martin?
We didn't destroy human life 8,000 miles away.
Yeah, what about all these weapon industry jobs? Like, are you serious? Like, you can still build weapons if you're not using them.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Saudi Arabia gets the same protection. So you really the kind of people that the media will allow you to even know about to elect are on board with these things.
So it's a false illusion. It's illusion of choice. You don't really have a choice.
All you can do is damage control, and now and then you'll get a mediocre Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, somebody that is, you know, seems to be against all these things, but they're few and far between, and the media smears them.
Right. Well, I mean, that was one of the most base things a sitting member of Congress has ever done, going to Syria and meeting with Assad. I mean, that's when she really first came.
Do.
Yes.
You know, Richard Black did it. He's a state senator for Virginia. He went over and met him, and he met with Assad? Yeah, he met his wife. Met his son.
Based.
You should check out the interview with Richard Black, Senator Richard Black of Virginia, state senator.
Okay.
Not the federal senator.
Currently a state senator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He is based. He knows Syria. He gets it.
Yeah. But yeah, you saw what happened.
Because they're not. It doesn't go all the way down to every level, because they don't need all of them. They just need, all they need is the courts and the press and the Senate, and they got it.
Yeah, and when you do something like that, like Tulsi did, man, she came back and got absolutely skewered by everybody.
Oh, they called her a Russian agent.
Yeah, Russian asset.
If you're not a Russian asset or a Nazi, like, you're not doing it right, because that's their two weapons, right? You're either a white supremacist Nazi, or you're a Russian agent or a hacker, whatever, Russian hackers.
Right. Wow. Well,
Hillary lost that election all on her own. Like, Russian interference.
Oh my God.
Facebook and Twitter had the interference. YouTube had the interference. They canceled the Facebook pages for the 2 Republican senators at a race that breaks the tie in the Senate, right? But not the Democrats, right? There was enormous election fraud. You can have one side counting millions of votes in the middle of the night, and the other party's not even allowed to look at it, and you're not allowed to verify it. And the first bill they pass when they get in office is getting rid of voter ID in federal elections.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. It's about the soul of America, Ryan.
They stole it. And they stole it. I don't like Bernie, but they stole it from him too.
Oh, he was rat fucked royally.
He absolutely stole it from him. And they stole it. They didn't steal it, but they kind of forced him out with Tulsi Gabbard and Ron Paul, because Ron Paul, even when he won, they wouldn't acknowledge it. And they just lied about it. And they would give him like 2 minutes in the debates, and they call him racist newsletters, crazy uncle, whatever. And then Tulsi qualifies for the debates. Said, well, now you got to make this much. So she did. It's like, well, knock this off my shoulder. I dare you. Boom. Okay, cross this line. You know. So they just said, well, no, you just can't be in the debates. You met all the criteria, but we're still not going to let you do it. But we're going to let others who didn't meet that criteria do it.
We had forums here in New Hampshire. They let fucking Deval Patrick into. Clown who got in the race super late. Tulsi was here for a fucking year. We were here for a year we did over probably close to 200 events, town halls. She met people all over the state. Deval Patrick announces he's running.
They banned her Google ads.
Yeah. They cucked the ads big time.
She got to talk, you know, on the stage. First time a lot of people ever saw her, probably.
Right.
And they were Googling the hell out of her.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's part of that's because she's good looking. Because let's face it, they're like, yeah, let's see Tulsi. But some of that, they're like, who's this woman that's actually making
Well,
sense?
saying things, yeah, we're not hearing anyone else say, just
Mhm.
basic shit that just common
Like,
sense to the rest
whoa,
of us, but
somebody
to
went
the
off script.
exactly, she went off script, right? Exactly. Oh man. Well,
They messed with her, and she immediately was like, "It's you, Hillary. You know,
yeah.
you are the right of the system." She knew exactly who
Oh,
was doing it from the shadows,
that was
and
everything.
she's 100% right. It was Hillary
That was everything
out of
we knew.
out of
We
spite.
nuked Hillary. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll always love Trump for beating her. I'm so happy Hillary
It's
was
the best thing he ever did is
denied the
stop Hillary
presidency
Clinton.
by Donald fucking Trump, Ryan. I mean, it's pretty satisfying to know that she's going to wake up every day the rest of her miserable life, and she's going to just think about him, his
You
face.
lost to that guy.
You fucking lost to
He
Trump,
was the hand-picked opponent,
and you picked him. You helped prop him up. You
thinking, "Oh,
fucking
this will be
dummy.
easy." He's like, "You underestimate how bad people hate you,
Oh,
bitch."
it's so good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, because you'd be in jail.
I know.
She's like, it's
He
just so
had Bill Clinton's rape victims in the front row
when
of the debate.
when he brought them and did that press conference and Bannon was in the back, that was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. That's when he was playing for real, dude. He brought a nuclear device to a knife fight. Yeah. Oh, he's like, it was locker room talk, Ryan. Bill Clinton has done much worse on the golf course. Okay, he has actually done. He has done these things, and then Hillary, who is a nasty lady who has a lot of hate in her heart, covered up his crimes and harassed the women. And the thing is, Trump was telling the truth about all of it. None of it was bullshit. It was all true.
Well, Hillary was playing around with women too.
Oh yeah, Huma.
Mm-hmm. My mom's cousin was her bodyguard for years, and she is a lesbian.
Hold on. Pause. Your mom's cousin. So your second cousin
Mm-hmm. Was
was
her bodyguard.
Hillary Clinton's bodyguard
He's
in
uniform
Arkansas
Secret
or
Service.
DC?
No, in DC.
Oh my God! And what did she say?
She would have women in her bed. I mean, what do you mean? What she said? Like he told us when his mother died. She used to live in Soho. I inherited. She's a retired nurse and artist. So I mean, she wasn't nursing. She lived a pretty long life. When she died, though, I inherited the bulk of her art books and furniture and stuff like that.
This is your grandmother?
No, it's my mom's cousin's mother, whatever that is.
I see. Yep.
My
So your
my
great
grandfather's sister.
That's your great aunt.
Yep. I had only met her twice, but I met her when I was 13, and we had a 20-hour conversation, like from the time we were there talking until we went to like a rotating restaurant on the roof, just talking about everything from science, art, philosophy. And I was like, this is where I get it from. Because it ain't from my folks, I'll tell you that. And then I met her again twice, 2 more times when I was 18, met her 3 times. It was the same thing, except I was big difference between 13 and 18.
Oh, yeah.
And talked the entire time. I learned a lot about her. You know, I'm a history person, so I wanted to know what was it like in New York at this point in time, and learn more about my granddad and stuff from her too, because I never met him. I met the other one though, but yeah, she just left me everything. One of her sons basically lost his mind. He got married to a woman for years, and it turned out she just one day was like, I'm a lesbian, and left, and he lost his mind. And the other one worked for government, was Hillary's bodyguard and all that. So that's more embarrassing than his brother. So she left things to me. Well, he had never met me, but wanted to, because it's like, why did my mother leave everything to you? You're her grand.
You're an obscure great nephew.
Yeah, exactly. Like
great nephew Dawson.
Not her kids, not her grandkids. They were like, it went to me. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was the last one to talk to her and listen to her. Like, no one did that. When, people are lonely when they're older, and it's bad. They hadn't discovered her body. She rotted for like a week. Her cats were eating her and stuff before they found her from Christmas to New Year's. She died around Christmas Eve, and then they didn't find her for a long time. It was bad. But we took a trip from Virginia to New York together. And I'm listening to him talking about everything. And he's kind of like nervous or whatever. He brought me some like White House M&Ms and stuff, and some little a pen that was actually like a knife in it and stuff. Like I was 12 or whatever. Whatever. But he had a submachine gun on him and was going like 90 miles an hour the whole time. And he got to walk around DC armed. And he just gets to New York, lays out all these guns and stuff on the bed. We're like, where were those? Like, I don't know how. He was wearing like a sweater. I'm like, where did you have
Holy
that?
shit. So this guy was currently Secret Service when you saw him.
He was still, yeah, he
Still
carried over.
Presidential Protective Detail.
Yep.
Okay.
You can see his shoulder in a bunch of photos of Hillary.
Oh, so he wanted to know why.
And he knew Gary that wrote the book. That's an interview I'll give you later. They knew each other, I found out. But anyway, I could not get him to tell me anything like, that secret is secret, right?
Explicitly, yeah.
Right. Until the way back. And, at first I even tried liquoring him up. That didn't work. We,
Hobo Select, Hobo Choice.
No, I didn't know about that yet. That's from Japan.
I know.
No, I was like, look, you can have, I gave him his mom's stuff. Like it's mine. Right. So I'm going to give it to you where it should have gone. I kept all the art stuff because what he's going to do with it. I actually do draw and stuff. So I just took a dresser, some chairs, a table, and all of the books. And I was like, everything, all of the pictures and stuff are yours, dude. Of course, but, and all the money went to him and stuff too. But I just kept what he wasn't going to use. And, then he did, we got him going on the Clintons finally. And boy, I learned a lot. And I was like, this is before cell phones and all that, or I've recorded it. This is before all that. But I had it in my head. I was like, all right, I'm listening to all this and get it all down. I was trying to remember the names because he was telling me the names of the women and everything.
Oh my gosh.
So I sat there. He says, you cannot say anything about that. And I didn't mention it until after he died. He was actually a pallbearer for President Ford.
Oh, wow.
I remember seeing him on the news. I was in Tennessee. I was like, oh, there's Marty. His code name was Marty Allen. I can say this now because he's dead and whatever, but that ain't his real name. But he he was there, and he was a very like Catholic, hardcore American patriot dude. Believed in all of it. But yeah, that disturbed him about Mrs. Clinton for sure.
Yeah,
she was just always yelling at Bill. Like they didn't know how he put up with it. No wonder he went to Monica or whatever, because she was just nasty. They called her name was Evergreen. That was her code name. And if Evergreen was coming down the hallway, they all knew, because she hated the cops and Secret Service people. Fucking hated them. Thought they were like spies for Bush Senior, and they're all paranoid. They went in and redid all the phone systems and stuff. And I'm like, well, I know why I did that. It wasn't to avoid what you think the Republicans are spying on the phones like you guys do. It's because that whole thing, Israel had their ears on the White House from the Clintons onward, because the entire phone networks they set up were there. When Trump switched that, they just spied on him with the Stingrays, right?
Yep.
Because it's cell phones at that point. Wasn't when the Clintons first went in. So yeah, they had the White House phones. Ken Starr and stuff. They listened to all those calls. They knew about Monica. They knew about all of it. Israel really captured the White House under the Clintons, and they sabotaged the peace deals, and anything to do with Gaza, was not going to happen.
So how the hell was Obama able to get the Iran nuclear deal through?
Well, it was really only on paper, because Obama's the one that originally put the sanctions on Iran in the first place. It's kind of like punching someone and then helping them up. Like, well, you're the one that hit them. But it was pressure from Europe and Asia that just could not do that deal. Like Japan, 99% of its fossil fuels are imported from abroad, and Iran is a big chunk of that. And it's like, do you really want to make people more energy dependent on Russia? And so you had other factions that were like, hey, this goes against our other said policies, right? But Israel kicked and screamed. And so what they did was they made a deal, but they never followed through, because they never unfroze the assets. They always said, we'll revisit this in 6 months. And if our weapons inspector, or not weapons inspector, our nuclear inspectors clear you, then then you can do open trade and da 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 da. Well, 6 months would go by, Iran would pass all the said bars that were set, and then they would just say, well, in another 6 months, and kick the can down the road. And they did that all until he left office. So the Iran deal ran schmeal because it was just a bunch of mouth. And European states were going to do what they wanted to do anyway. America isn't that all powerful. They can't make everyone put an embargo on Iran, but they certainly tried. Trump just got rid of all pretense of that. He's just like, yeah, the hell with this deal. But in doing so, other states, especially in Asia, China, Korea, Japan, they just started buying oil again. And so did some Europeans. The Europeans just did it in a roundabout way, right? And so it was, black markets always win, seems to be the case. They go in with a flag of Panama and get oil, and then, in the middle of the water, flip it back to England or whatever, and bring it in. So,
Yeah. So to bring it kind of all full circle, I mean, obviously the stuff flared up in Palestine the last couple of weeks, but is it just going to kind of leave the news cycle and just go back to business as usual and nothing's going to happen? Or do you feel like because it was so outrageous and there was so many more eyes and just much more awareness on this thing that something has to give here? I mean, what do you see happening?
I don't think that's determined. I think that depends on what we do. I think if we don't do anything, it will leave the news cycle, and that's that. I mean, they're already attacking the Alaska Mosque again. The thing that kicked it off, Israel's doing it again already. Hours after the ceasefire, they're there shooting people with rubber bullets and beating on them. Right? If we don't drop it, like that's why I have the flag behind me today, even though I'm talking about Epstein. If we keep it in the consciousness, like this needs to be the last time. This needs to be. Look, first they had a military defeat. Israel did. That's a huge PR defeat. I don't think they want it to flare up again. But that's assuming they're rational actors, which they aren't. These people are hell bent on revenge. Like, it's pathological. They gotta have it. Got it. Oh no, they'll carry that around with them forever. So they will do it again. They'll attack again, and Hamas will fire rockets again. And it's going to get worse and worse every time Israel does it. I don't think this is the final time, or like, well, this time everybody learned. Not everybody, but better than 2014, better than, Cast Lead or Pillar of God or these stupid operations anymore. It is improving, and you can see the writings on the wall. Might be the next time or the next time after that, but the direction is a free Palestine. They can't put that genie back in the bottle. They're losing in Syria. Russia has decided to escort Iranian ships to deliver oil to Syria, which is what they need for their operations. A lot of people assume, well, Syria's in the Middle East, they have a lot of oil. Not really. Israel and Syria don't really have a lot of oil. Iraq does, Saudi Arabia does, Iran does, but and then Azerbaijan does, but not Syria. Never wasn't a big oil exporter or anything. And Rojava's annexed, and the U.S. Air Force protects it. Biden's not going to move on that, but with Israel being so exposed by Hamas, I don't think Syria is worried about shooting at their planes the next time they come around. In fact, they shot at them last time, and that's why one of these anti-air missiles landed in Negev, about 30 kilometers north of Dimona. And I'm just thinking, guys, like, Israel, is it worth it to shoot at Latakia and Damascus? I mean, if a missile hits Dimona, where you secretly have your nuclear weapons, causes a fission reaction, and that goes kaboom, I might laugh to death. No, I mean, that could be very serious. Major war with nukes. I mean, stop it. Right. They need to knock it off. This is a lunatic state, as Norman Finkelstein said. It's a lunatic state. God's chosen lunatics. They will do it. They'll Samson option the earth. They don't care. They don't think. They have no foresight. It's just immediate, like, well, this is what I want. And they're so used to getting their way that they don't see the comeuppance coming. But everyone else, I see that left hook in mid swing, and there's nothing in the way. And it's ready to just Tyson these people.
I'm feeling some pushback, man. I'm really, because obviously
I'm seeing left, right, center being like, fuck Israel. Like,
we've had
that's
enough of
ethnic
this.
cleansing.
Enough of this.
Everyone's against it. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm feeling it, man. I'm seeing it. And obviously, you've been doing great work on it. Abby Martin's doing great work on it. I had her on my
Mhm.
show last week. So really what we
I'm
can do,
glad she's really. I'm really proud of how she's come around on this issue because she wouldn't
Abby's
listen at
amazing.
all.
She's amazing, man. I
I'm
mean,
telling you though, before she went there, she didn't have a clue. And
well,
we tried to cue her in on it. And then even when she went on Rogan, she was like, "It's not the lobby." And like, yes, it is. She'll
yeah.
graduate.
But either way,
I'll tell you,
man,
it's great.
she's
Is Max Blumenthal. You should get him on your show. He's
Blumenthal's
on the
awesome.
ball.
Gray Zone. He's a base lord with Israel
Gideon
and
Livy is
Palestine.
great. Grant Smith is great. Scott Horton's
Finkelstein.
great.
Yeah.
Norman Finkelstein's
Well, hey,
great. Although
we got
Finkelstein does oppose BDS though, but understand his arguments.
yeah. Well, I'm good for BD, but I don't like sanctions on anybody.
That's
So
me too. Like I think
yeah.
I'm mainly on mainly on the D.
Not the S.
Boycotting it's doesn't. I mean, we don't really buy any Israeli products anyway. It's
Yeah. Well, L brands. Let's
but
make sure we boycott L brands,
you
right?
should boycott all L brands, Victoria's Secret, all
Fuck
Night
Les
Guard
Wexner.
products.
Fuck Victoria's Secret.
Divestment's the most effective and dangerous for them, though. That's what, if you can get your universities, churches, and things to divest, Israel's done because they get more money through that than they do from foreign aid from the U.S. government. And of course,
Wow.
I'm all for end all aid to Israel too. I mean, that's right there. I think
Yeah.
the wall.
Yep,
I made
that's
stickers
pretty.
for it.
There's no confusion about that. Well, great,
Yeah, I'm
Ryan.
wearing my Palestine shirt today, or I was. I'm wearing Black Panther now.
Well, we're
Black
with Black.
T-shirts.
We're with
I
the
had it
Black
on
Panthers
earlier.
too.
Yeah,
But
Wakanda, man. No.
Wakanda forever. But Ryan, I want to thank you for coming on, man. And obviously, we have our Four Horsemen we're doing every month, and we do have Scott Horton coming on next month. But yeah, tell everyone where
Really
they
great
can.
interview with Grant Smith and Scott Horton from the other day, by the way, that goes
Cool.
over. I didn't get to hear it all, but
I'll
I
have to
heard
check that
enough
out.
of it. I knew it was going to be good from just those two.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, those
Yeah,
guys
it's like,
they know their shit, and you know your shit. So tell the people where they can find you, Ryan. We know you've been deplatformed, but you're working on that. You're working on building back better.
building back better.
How can people support you, Ryan? God damn it, Ryan! I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of Hunter. How can people find you, Ryan, and support your work?
In Osaka, Japan. No, I run the anti-neocon report, which is ANC, like North Carolina, ancreport.com. Has all the stuff, and there's buttons on there for everything else. I'm on VK, which is like Facebook that doesn't ban you. It's the Russian Facebook.
Russia.
I think as long as you don't talk about Russia, you're all right. Hey, use what we can.
Hey, man.
I actually do have a Twitter now. They gave me one of my Twitters back recently. Twitter. Yeah, and that's ANC Report on Twitter. ANCreport.com is my website. I'm on VK. I'm on Parler, but I don't really use it anymore because it seems to be broken. I have something called PeerTube. It's not PeerTube.com though. It's just PeerTube's just like the stuff we're using. It's vid, like video, vid.ancreport.com. Right. And really, if you can memorize ancreport.com, every button to everything else is on there. We have a Telegram, we have a Discord, we have 2 Telegrams. We have one where I announce stuff and one where everybody discusses stuff. And I have it that way so, someone doesn't just run in yelling the N-word or whatever and get it canceled.
Yeah.
Then they will do that on purpose. Like someone that hates us will do it on purpose.
Of course.
Like, oh, I love Hitler and Ryan Dawson. That's what they do.
Those are agent provocateurs. They will not be tolerated. Infowars.com.
And I will dick pills.
Buy my dick pills. If you're fighting the Rockefellers for 17 hours and you're going to be hard and focused as a rock, buy my anti-New World Order, anti-aging, colloidal silver, hydroxychloroquine dick pills. But I'll drop all the links in this video and put that all out there. So yeah, keep at it, Ryan. We're going to keep going with this, man, and we got to get
live stream on there. By the way, if you are a YouTuber and you see, the oven approaching, the smallpox is coming, the Holodomor is on the way, the potato famine is already kicked into gear, whatever analogy you want. You might want to start backing it up rather than just on BitChute and Odyssey. PeerTube will live stream and Shekel Chat. So, we can set you up with that.
We can work
if you're
with
on Patreon and you see it, same reason. If you have a website, we can create you a paywall with tier lists and everything, just like Patreon, and you won't get canceled. So
yeah, I do want to start live streaming and Shekel chatting for sure, because
you definitely should, dude. Just talk. I'll hand you one of my nerds. He's up right now. We can set it up for you. You could live stream. You could live stream a recording. It's kind of lame, but and do questions at the end or whatever. But you can use this
Right.
video for that if you want.
Okay.
I want more people. The more we populate PeerTube, PeerTube's kind of like YouTube, except it's just politics and stuff. There's no cat chasing a bag or whatever,
Yeah. Epic fail
makeup
videos.
tutorials and stuff. It's because you can put all that on YouTube pretty safely.
Right.
But for politics, you're just not allowed to talk, right? So I would say VK replaces Facebook. PeerTube is one of our YouTube replacements. There's Gab and Minds is sort of the anti-Twitter. There's also a Pleroma element. There are companies out there that are filling the void, but the hardest part is getting everyone to leave what they're addicted to
Yeah.
and go to the new thing. But I promise you, if you will leave Facebook, because you're going to get forced to eventually, and get on VK, add my name, and just start adding my friends because they're all based, you will have a legit news feed in no time. And without all the damn advertisements that are on Facebook and all the nonsense, and you're not going to get shadow banned. You will be amazed how quickly your page builds and you get like 1,000 followers because you're not being shadow banned.
Sure.
You'd be amazed how fast your PeerTube might grow as well. Same reason, because YouTube algorithm isn't giving you the show.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna look into all that. Well, I want to thank you again, Ryan, and thanks everyone for listening. And please like and subscribe to this page. We're still on all those social media platforms, but I'm going to definitely be exploring these other options. And we appreciate you listening.
Just in case. Yeah.
Yeah, just in case. So we appreciate you tuning in and listening, and we'll catch you next time on Jackman Radio. Thank you.
Fuck Israel. Fuck
Peace
Israel.
Peace in the Middle East.
Peace in the Middle East.